Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Total Ramblings. Thanks very much for joining me. So today we've kind of got an unboxing going on. Now, as with all my unboxings, I don't do the most cutting edge unboxings or reviews or things like that. And I fully expect that this has been probably out for some months now, and I'm probably horribly late, but I don't care. I bought this from my local comic store, Christie Comics. As you'll see, it cost me £74.99. And what we have here are some Star Wars figures. Now, I am of an age, I'm 53 next month in June 2024. I am of an age where I was 6 when Star Wars first came out. Now, I might be slightly confused on this, but I seem to recall that my mum was going to take me to see Star Wars on my birthday. But I think we went to see Close Encounters of the Third Kind instead. I've no doubt someone will correct me on the timings. I'm in the UK, by the way. But I did get to see it eventually. My mum says she went to see it at the premiere. We lived in Bristol at the time, at the local premiere. And she basically, her first thought was, my God, Andrew will love this. And basically, I imagine she probably regretted it from ever since, because you know, the moment sort of Darth Vader came on the screen, I was like, who's that man in black? What's going on? Who's this? Who's that? And I was obsessed with Star Wars. I was 6 years old. You know, it was kind of made for me, right? And then as kind of life went on, you know, I kind of fell into basically living in my own little head or living in these science fiction worlds, including Star Wars, Doctor Who, which became my main love, that kind of thing, really. So basically, I was of an age when the first Star Wars figures came out, and I can remember my first figure was R2-D2, and that's the main reason I've bought this particular set, because I don't actually have a sort of original R2-D2, and I'm rather hoping that this retro version will kind of allow me to relive those memories. I can remember very much looking through some kind of catalogue or something, basically saying, looking at the Star Wars figures, saying, I want that one, I want that one, I want that one, you know, wanted Han Solo in particular. Never had a Millennium Falcon. I had the Palitoy cardboard sort of Death Star, which was absolutely amazing. One of the best toys I've ever had. Wish I still had it. And of these figures here that you see, C-3PO, R2-D2, Ben Kenobi, the Death Squad Commander, the Jawa, and the Tusken Raider, I had them all except the Death Squad Commander. I never had one of those as a child. Basically, I had friends that did. I had a friend that had a Millennium Falcon as well. As I say, never had one of those. So I'm very much looking forward to opening this and kind of reliving some of those memories. So basically, I see. It's trouble. This thing is, right, I'm pretty certain my Jawa would have had the cloth cape, but I don't know whether it's a false memory, but I do kind of remember the vinyl cape one as well. But I think what I'm probably doing is conflating memories there of other figures. So yeah, as I say, this is going to be a real sort of nostalgia fest for me. Basically, the only sort of 3.75-inch Star Wars figures that I collect are the retro collection ones when I can afford them, and also I like to pick up stormtroopers and Imperial sort of, you know, officers and things like that. I don't by any means have them all. I've got what I laughingly call a little sort of Imperial army. I've got like an AT-ST, I've got an AT-AT, I've got a tanky thing, one of those troop transporter things, you know, and I've probably got maybe a couple of dozen stormtroopers of different types. And I do have the other sort of retro figures. So there was Princess Leia, Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, Han Solo, Chewbacca, and what was the other one? Because there were 12 originally, and that's going to bug me now. I can't remember what it was. Oh, of course, the Stormtrooper, of course. So basically, this set will sort of complete the original vintage collection of the original 12 Star Wars figures for me. There's also a Phantom Menace set knocking around in the Christie Comics, which was another £75. I'd really like that one too. I am, as I say, I collect all of the retro figures as they come out. So I've got ones from Book of Boba Fett, the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, Ahsoka, and also, of course, you know, the ones they did from Star Wars Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. So, but this is the first box of this, like this, I've picked up. So I'm going to stop rambling on now, and I'm going to open these and we're going to have a look at them together. So I have opened the box, and as you'll see, we do have figures on card backs. I'm just going to take them out in the order they appear. So first of all, we have Ben / Obi-Wan Kenobi. So yes, I'm not going to say it again. One of the figures that I originally had. Let me just zoom out a little bit for you so that we can have a look at this card in all its glory. There we go. So as always with the retro kind of figures, we've got this sort of faded and sort of creased design down the edges. The cardstock on these, I mean, I think this is probably a little bit thicker than normal, but I mean, just look at that. I mean, the original figures, they didn't have the plastic insert that you see sitting in. They were just kind of loose inside there. I think some of them might have had like sort of little bits of cardboard kind of clipped between the feet, but yeah, that's Obi-Wan Kenobi. We will open him in a sec. The second one, oh no, sorry, the second one that comes out, Tusken Raider. So again, he's got plastic cape. His arms are sort of turned because, you know, he's holding his gaffy stick. The retro sticker is literally a sticker. In a minute, I'm probably going to make some people very upset by opening these. The nice thing is, of course, is that they actually all have they've all got the sort of the punch out in there. So the Death Squad commander, basically he's an Imperial Navy trooper. These are the sort of regular soldiers that were sort of manning the Death Star. Stormtroopers, of course, typically being the elite. This one has been bent in the box. Now, I don't care about things like that, but I know some people would get very upset. Of course, the original figures that I bought would have had Palatoy written on here and not Kenner, because I am, of course, in the UK. The next one that comes out. So here we have C-3PO, and I can kind of feel it already in my hands. The original sort of figures, the vac metal ones, were kind of like slightly sticky in how the sort of joints moved, and I can almost feel that already, you know. If I haven't mentioned already, these are 5 points of articulation figures because they are the retro line. Next we have the Jawa, with his little cloth cape. I seem to recall he might have been cheaper when he first came out. I could have been making that up completely because he was smaller, but yeah, Jawas are kind of cool with his little gun that I think I kept mine, but I know lots of people would have probably lost theirs. And finally, and the one I am going to open last, R2-D2. Now, I've got memories here of visiting my great-grandmother who lived in a town called Petersfield, and she was obviously very old. And I remember I had R2-D2 as a little boy, 6 or 7-year-old boy, and he was the only figure I had to start with because he was probably my favourite character. And I used to I remember playing with him in her garden, and he got very beaten up over the years. The paper sort of sticker on the front got very sort of blackened and worn and sort of fading away near the edges, but I really loved that figure. Now, the original R2-D2 had a clickable head. As you turn the head, it would sort of click, click. I'm hoping this one does the same thing. I don't know for certain, but we will find out. But this is kind of the one that sort of tipped me over the edge into buying this particular set. I don't normally keep packaging, but what I think I'm probably going to do, because I've got this nice big box, is I'm probably going to keep the card backs in there just for the sake of it. I've probably no doubt in about 6 months, a year time, I'll probably end up throwing them out. But yeah, there we go. So I'm going to crack on and open these very carefully because, as I just said, I do want to keep the card backs on this one occasion. Oh, the other thing that was in the box, this consumer leaflet. I really don't know. I mean, is it Lord? Do they have? Yeah, choking. It's basically a choking warning. So I guess they have to have that by law. But yeah, very dull. Anyway, let me get to opening these and I'll show you them. Okay, all the figures are now open, and as promised, we are starting with Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's a little bit looser than I would have expected, being brand new and all that. The head, yeah, it's fine. Of course, we have the classic sort of retractable lightsaber. There we go, because that's what they did back then, which is kind of cool. So obviously I'm getting a lot of sort of, let me just again bring this down and zoom it in a little bit for you. There we go. Right, so yeah, Obi-Wan Kenobi. I remember, I think my Obi-Wan Kenobi spent a lot of the time out of his cloak. I can't really remember why. I do remember there was a Star Wars Weekly, I think it was Star Wars Weekly. Yeah, it was Star Wars Weekly, that had like a story of Obi-Wan Kenobi before the Empire, and he was wearing all sort of black and was being a cool Jedi Knight. I think he was solving a murder on board a spaceship or something like that. I do seem to remember that, and I thought Obi-Wan Kenobi was kind of cool. Obviously, that story completely non-canon now, but yeah, there you go. So, there he is. Hopefully you can see him. Now, the next one, I can't remember if I'm doing this in the same order or not. The Tusken Raider. So, as I say, he has his hands kind of like that, so he can hold his gaffy stick, so you can recreate the famous scene where he's kind of going on top of Luke Skywalker. He's a little bit less loose, shall I say, in the sort of articulation, in the sort of legs. Again, another figure that I had as a child. I mean, goodness knows where my Star Wars figures are now. What happened was I got like a kind of second run of another sort of Star Wars collection, and I kind of gave it away in its entirety to a friend of a friend. And then since then, I've kind of built it up again, really. The ones that I had in my sort of second run were sort of, I started like when the Power of the Force came out, on the sort of green backs, and you had the very buff kind of Luke Skywalker and what they called Monkey Leia and stuff like that. So, you know, that was kind of like the second. But again, I did exactly the same thing again. I had a little Imperial Army. They had a couple of AT-STs, an AT-AT, an original one, you know, and it was all very much like the same as what I've done now. When I originally had the Star Wars figures in the 70s, I only ever had 2 Stormtroopers, and I always wanted more. On the Palatoy Death Star, there were at least 2 or 3 Stormtroopers printed on sort of backdrops, so they always kind of fleshed out my troop numbers. But always wanted more Stormtroopers. My mum always said no. Always wanted like another Lego kind of mini spaceship as a fighter, but there you go. Anyway, this is the guy I didn't have as a child. I was, of course, very familiar with him, though, because I had at least one friend who had 1 or 2 of them. I had one friend who had so many Star Wars figures, it put my collection to shame, really. Like I say, I had the original 12, but I only had 2 Stormtroopers, and the Death Star, so my collection was pretty paltry, really. Anyway, here's this guy. So basically, like I said, he's essentially an Imperial naval trooper. So this guy would be like the regular troops of the Empire. Stormtroopers are specialist troops, fanatical to the Emperor, right? And, you know, a lot of sort of series, for example, well, okay, he's fallen over. Rogue One, for example, had like Stormtroopers kind of guarding prisons and stuff. That's not really what Stormtroopers were for. They were kind of... They were elite soldiers, as I said, and they would have been used sparingly and certainly not in sort of routine day-to-day activities. He's not going to stand up again, so I'm not going to worry about him. Next, C-3PO. Now, I've got, as part of my... He's not quite as sticky as I remember the original being, or a little bit there. You can kind of feel the friction there, or the sort of back metal, you know. I remember everyone's C-3POs got very rubbed down, and you could see the white sort of plastic underneath where they've been played with so much. Anyway, sorry, I'm digressing. It's just total ramblings. So basically, I remember... sorry, I've got the Tantive 4 play set. Have I got 2 or 3? I think it might just be 2. And on my sort of list of figures that I wanted for a while, I've wanted a nice shiny C-3PO so I could recreate the opening scenes of Star Wars Episode 4. I kind of wasn't expecting necessarily to get a retro one. I was kind of thinking more along the vintage line with a bit more articulation. But I have to say, this one looks particularly good, and I think he's going to look very good if I were to recreate that scene in some photos. C-3PO, not my favourite character. I've heard some stories about the actor as well, but I don't know for certain because I've never met him. C-3PO, bit prissy, much preferred R2-D2. I do, however, remember, so you know how most kids kind of get upset when they discover that, a certain person who visits at a certain time of year may not be real. I've got to say that in case kids are watching, although it's not made for you. I remember getting very, 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 very upset when I found out that C-3PO and R2-D2 weren't real robots, but just men in costumes. Spoilers, right? Really upset. That was my, if you're a child, cover your ears. That was my Father Christmas moment for me. Anyway, there's C-3PO. Glad to have him. Now, next we have the Jawa with his ion blaster. Now, there he is. I don't know how well that's coming across. Now that I've felt the cape, yeah, I do. Mine definitely had this cloth cape. So I think the original run of Jawas in the US had like plastic capes, like Obi-Wan Kenobi's here. And I think it's those ones. I'm not an expert. Don't quote me. I think it's those ones that are very, very rare. And for some reason, but no, I definitely would have had one of these. So he's kind of, the Jawa's weird, right? Because he's kind of got like a cape within a cape. So it's like Obi-Wan and the Tusken Raider. They've kind of got double layers of sort of clothing, if you like, which is fine. But the Jawa has got a hood and a hood, if you see what I mean. Anyway, yeah, so Jawas are cool. Another one that you might want several of. You might want several Tusken Raiders. You might want several Jawas, to go and terrorise your droids. Yeah, but he's pretty cool. I do think the cloth cape is quite nice. If I've got the information wrong about cloth and vinyl, then, sue me. I'm not an expert. I just remember what I remember, but even some of that is not necessarily completely sort of accurate. So, what else can I say? Not a lot. So we're going to get to the final figure now. This, as I say, is the one that finally, when I saw it, well, when I realised that it was there, it finally sort of tipped me over into buying the set. R2-D2. This was my first ever Star Wars action figure. Doesn't have much articulation. He's only got 2 legs, but listen. That got worn out by me. I literally wore out the clicker. It wouldn't work after years of playing, probably after months of playing. But the edges of these stickers started to roll up and get very black and gummy where he'd been played with so much. He was a really loved toy. I think the silver might have got a bit eroded as well, much like 3PO. The sort of the white plastic underneath would have shown through. Together they look pretty amazing. Obviously, these are the first 2 characters you see in Star Wars. They're there throughout the whole film. R2-D2 was just one of my little heroes. Him and Han Solo used to play Star Wars in the playground with my mates, and I wanted to be Han Solo. Everyone else wanted to be Luke Skywalker, but when they said I could be Han Solo, I was like, wow, really? Because Han Solo was just so cool to me. So there we go, everybody. That's the complete collection. I've got to do this quick because that Tusken Raider sand person is wobbling and threatening to fall over. So is the Jawa, and the Death Trooper, as we've already seen, likes to fall over. For this review, I actually tried to get some stands today in town, but they don't have any. So I need to get some proper stands. I remember when I was a kid seeing an advert for the little sort of circular with the peg plastic stands for standing up Star Wars action figures, and I remember dearly wanting them. I think you could only buy them in packs of 3 or 6, and of course I needed at least 12, and well, they were like 1.99 or 99p or something. I never had money when I was 6 or 7 years old. Anyway, I'd like to get a few, if nothing else, just for doing these reviews. But these guys will probably go back into the retro Lego, not Lego, one with Lego on their head. These guys will go back into the retro Star Wars box where I'm putting all my retro figures. I have, and I will be, keeping the actual box itself. Let me see if I can sneak this in without knocking anyone over. So yeah, I will be keeping that. Let me just zoom out for you. Because it's cool and it stores those card backs nicely. So yeah, thanks very much for watching this. Thank you for sort of going down memory lane with me a little bit. I was just putting the little gun into the Jawa's hand, and his hands are so itty bitty. It's really cool. Yeah. Before Star Wars, when I was a kid, I had Action Man, and ironically, it's Star Wars toys that killed Action Man, because, you know, I think, I could be wrong, but I think these were the first toys or action figures to be done at this kind of scale so that they could do, you know, vehicles for them and stuff. Action Man had vehicles as well. I've got over 100 sort of vintage Action Man figures and about 60 odd vehicles as well, but I'm reliving my whole childhood, and this kind of really, this was a big part of my childhood, and I'm really glad I bought them. I'd like to buy the Phantom Menace set. Again, that's not for nostalgia, just because I like to collect the retro figures. So, yeah, thanks very much, and I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Total Ramblings. Bye-bye. If you enjoy what I do here, although I can't think why, please remember to click the like button, smash that subscribe button, and hit the bell icon to be notified whenever I post a new video. You might also want to check out my website, www.worldsbestestpoet.com, if you fancy a laugh.